Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest monologue. This one will be an exception because I don't usually do monologues about very current events, but this one is an exception to that rule. Now, we all know about the demonstrations that have been happening in Nairobi, starting from yesterday, connected to the finance bills and the sort of punitive provisions therein. Now, we all know what happened, so I won't talk much about that. What I'll talk about is there's a group of people who tried to put this down, who opposed the demonstrators and the demonstration, despite the fact that their right to picket over whatever they want to picket about is enshrined in our constitution. And one of the main lines of opposition is that they don't even know what the contents of the bill is. They haven't read it in detail. They don't know what GDP, all these other things are, balance of payments, debt to GDP ratio, and all those nonsense economic details. The thing is, it's their right. Even if someone knew only one bit of the bill, it's their right to demonstrate over that one bit of the bill. The rest may or may not matter to him. So why does it bother someone that someone else is demonstrating over something that concerns everybody? This is imperialism. In my talks with both Wandi and Joy and Joe Kobudi in the past, we've talked about imperialism. And in a recent monologue of mine, I also said that empires fall these days not under the invasion from another empire, but under the weight of their own nonsense and contradictions. And in this context, Kenya is like an empire. Kenya is an imperialist country, although we don't have an empire. So we are sort of like fake emperors, but we embrace that false emperorhood. We love it so much and we cling to it for dear life. Those who are opposing are of a different generation from those who are protesting. And by generations, there's sort of some age divide between them, but in Kenya, mostly I'd say it's political generations or psychological generations or philosophical generations. So I'll talk about, first of all, I need to clarify we have a generation of 45 to about 60-year olds. This is the generation within which I fall chronologically. These are what I'd call for this conversation generation N, N being for nonsense. This is the generation that has led this country down the garden path to the dead end where we are now. Think of any institution in Kenya that's important and underperforming. There's a 50 something year old at the helm of it with a lot of paper qualifications and sitting there doing nothing and changing nothing and expecting success as he earns his money. These are the people who have led Kenya down the garden path. They're responsible for our problem, my generation. In the conservation field, these are the people at the helm of conservation organizations earning big salaries, driving big SUVs, and following orders from some foreign high school dropouts with their PhDs. So we have to isolate this generation. These are the beneficiaries of imperialism. Imperialism has helped these people so much. Their papers have put them in positions to earn a lot of money and have personal material success without innovating or actually doing anything. This is the I came to realize this is the reason why I can't fit in these organizations. And because it's full of this ilk of people, all of them. I don't know of any other in the conservation field in Kenya that thinks the way I do other than violent material possibly. So we have to know that these are the benefits, and that's why they oppose these protests. They are also in leadership. That's why you find someone like Senator Oruoba, whose pet pet issue has been provision of sanitary pads for girls around the country, is supporting the finance bill that proposes heavy tax on sanitary pads, majority of which are imported. It's because if sanitary pads suddenly become affordable to all girls and ladies, then Gloria will have no relevance in society as a donor of free sanitary pads or as an advocate of free sanitary pads. Her issue will have been taken out of circulation, and she'll become irrelevant. So she must defend the high cost of sanitary pads. And this is how imperialism works. Even on in the international stage, those countries that suppress our trade are the same ones that give us aid. The countries that are providing bombs to kill people in Gaza are the same ones sending shipments of food, aren't they? That's how imperialism works. It's by creating dependency and hierarchies. So be wary of those of around my generation around you who will tell you you don't know what you are doing. This I'm now talking to the young. They'll tell you you don't know what you are doing. Yet they're the ones who brought this country to its knees. This budget is written by the IMF. Even the secretary of the IMF, who probably drafted this budget, is a 50-something-year-old Kenyan with high qualifications. You can look and find a gentleman called Seda Ogada. And these are the things we have to look at, because everything gets to its sell by date. When these contradictions become too heavy to bear, systems collapse. And this is why our security forces are running around aimlessly, arresting hundreds, literally hundreds of people, because they're trying to find the leader of this, and they can't find a leader. Can't find a leader because it's the issue. How many Arab countries um, governments were brought down because a vegetable hawker was harassed by police on the streets of Tunis? No one even remembers who that guy's name was, but we all remember the effects of that harassment. This is how revolutions work. We don't plan them; they just happen. And our empire has reached its sell by date. I was very amused when I saw a whole parliamentary group coming out to detail what they have changed in the bill. So now we should accept it. Where I come from a community where there's a fishing community, and we say fish rots from the head. It's usually from the gills, actually, because of the filtration activity and gathers bacteria there. When the head is rotten, you don't present that fish to someone saying, I've removed the gills or I've removed the head, so it's okay, you can eat it now. You can fry, cook it, and eat it. No. The bill is now facing total rejections. It's a poisoned chalice. No one wants it anymore. And as they keep hanging on to it, or you can't remove one rotten potato from a sack and think the rest are okay. And they're now thinking they'll remove those things and present it, and it will become acceptable. No. They're going to have to withdraw the bill in total. And they need to decide on what to do fast, because the rejection is going to move from the bill to rejection of the people and the party and the political positions. And that's how governments come down. But they're too indolent to see this. And they think or thought they could manage this process by putting the leader of opposition on the government payroll, of the titular leader of opposition on government payroll. So we end up with a government that doesn't know what they're doing, because the person they thought they needed to manage is busy on their payroll, but the people who they are not giving anything are busy protesting. So this is why we need to be careful. And now the leader of opposition, of the minority leader in parliament, Opio Wandai, said he's now started calling for the rejection of the bill. And I'm telling him, no, you have no place here now. You are on the state trip to the US, benefiting from the largesse of this overtaxation. You are one of the beneficiaries. And one of the demonstrators was interviewed and said that they don't need the opposition politicians taking part, because they don't need any support in of that kind. And the real message there is that you have become irrelevant, opposition politicians, because you've been playing this back and forth fence sitting game for too long, wanting inclusion rather than wanting justice. Now you've been included, and you've been included in the rotten bill. You've been included as beneficiaries. Even in the meetings to discuss this bill, they went to discuss it in some resort in Naivasha. Yet the 9 billion shilling Bunge Towers was just opened a couple of months ago, full with conference and meeting rooms. But they had to take per diem. to discuss. They had to take money to discuss this misuse of money. So we have to look at this thing and understand. We've said before, I said many times, the future in Kenya only belongs to those who understand this where we are, who can adjust accordingly. Even on the global stage, the countries that could reinvent themselves, people that can reinvent themselves, start thinking, stop being just doers. This thing we call competence, on which we are basing our educational system. We've called the younger generation several times incompetent. That's a compliment, actually, because competence in the Kenyan context is about obeying orders, taking money from donors, doing what they like, um, obeying something called government, and resolutely not using your brain at any point in your professional life. And that's what got us where we are, this so called competence. We've pandered enough to the Constitution, which states the enshrines public participation and right to picket. This is public participation going on. Now we need to learn how to do this. This is public participation. For too long, we've been going through the motions of public participation but never changing anything. Even regulatory bodies, NEMA does EIS but never refuses anything. Everything is approved. You wonder what's it for? Everything does public participation, but it's per diem around, but the original plan just goes through. Well, this time everything has its sell by date, and that's what has happened this time. So you're facing rejection. You might even pass the bill. I don't know in its mongrel form that it is now. But the ballot box is the next problem. And the online space, you can no longer do that because the online space is like a river, and the youth own that river. The youth are the crocodiles. If you want to try and fight them in the online space, be my guest. It has gotten to a point where people in government have to think. And right now, they do not know what to do. And that's what's facing the politicians, the legislators, etc. They were elected to represent their people, but they represent the executive. That's why in the finance bill, there was even some time back, there was one of the proposals was very punitive taxes on livestock, huge amounts of money levied on cows, goats, camels, sheep, etc. I looked at all the MPs from pastoralist communities. Not one of them said a word. Not a word. The Masai, Samburu MPs, none of them said a word, yet their people are going to be punished by this tax. Then I realized, oh, it's imperialism. As long as your people are kept poor, you will remain relevant in their lives because they will depend on you to some level. You don't want your people to be empowered because if they're empowered, they will now start asking hard questions of you about the leadership. All these conservation schemes taking land away from pastoralists, every single one of them is headed by a pastoralist and of the age group of the generation N that I spoke about, and highly qualified, educated, mostly in the United States. That's how imperialism works. Take one of them, empower him to suppress the others. The banning of grazing of animals in gazetted government lands has been put forward by a cabinet secretary who's from a pastoralist community herself. Rather than try and manage it and do it in an organized manner that doesn't harm the forests, no, just ban your people, disempower them. That's how imperialism works. So the empire has come to an end. Stop looking for leaders. Stop screaming about who knows. Mordecai doesn't know what the provisions are in the bill. Mordecai doesn't know what the percentage of GDP. That's nonsense. The empire has come to an end, and the future belongs to those who can reinvent themselves to live in an egalitarian future or a republican future that is not imperial. Those of you are still waiting for empire, keep waiting, keep waiting. Maybe eventually your kids will know after you have long gone and stopped loading them with your nonsense. But that's where we are now. So the time has come. It's up to you to decide where you will end up.